sure ain't the best place in the world to be hitching a ride.
I know, the bus driver threw me out.
Look,
Oh, Kristen Cole. Hey! Oh, hey! Jesus! Hey!
Look, Kristen Cole. Been no buses around here for the past month.
On the Border is part of a small subgenre of border noir that leans heavily on Mexican-American border politics, corruption, and sex. The subgenre's most famous film, the 1958 Orson Welles classic Touch of Evil, kicked off a spate of films that took noir somewhere outside of the streets of New York City, Los Angeles, and Chicago. Instead, we get heat-warped Texas highways, narcotic heists, and sweat-drenched clothes. None of this is to say that On the Border and Touch of Evil are on the same level. In fact, On the Border is one of the dumber films to leak out of the El Paso cinema scene, but it does have that same dusty heatwave desperation to it. Casper Van Dien plays Jake Barnes, a bank security guard with a shady past. In the hyperkinetic opening, we see him double-cross his partners during a botched robbery and get away scot-free. The bank's manager, played by Daniel Baldwin, hires Jake to find the man who's sleeping with his wife, Rosalita.
I believe someone is fucking my wife, and I'd like to know who it is.
Of course, Jake is the one sleeping with her, so he doesn't give the investigation a whole lot of effort. But this isn't that kind of movie, oddly enough. Jake picks up a pretty blonde girl named Kristen on the way back from a sweaty tryst with Rosalita. Even though she lies to him, he lets her sleep at his place anyway. It seems Kristen is part of a group, led by Bryan Brown, who are trying to pull a heist on Jake's bank. Even though it's a small bank, there's a window where the bank will be filled with $7 million on its way through town. Kristen's part of the job is to seduce Jake into taking part in the heist.
What? Do something wrong?
I don't want anything from you, Kristen.
It's just dinner.
The problem is that Jake and Rosalita were also planning to hijack the money.
And she said her boyfriend dumped her, but that was bullshit too.
You've got some girl staying with you?
Rosie, she's trying to get me in heat so she can reel me in. She's a fake.
Jake turns down Kristen's sexual advances but agrees to take part in her group's heist, seemingly double-crossing Rosalita. Kristen tells Jake that she's essentially a sex slave for Bryan Brown's Barry, Montana, and begs him to help her get out from under him. Complicating matters is Jake's old partner, Sykes, played by an incredibly over-the-top Bentley Mitchum, who finds out about Jake and Rosalita. He also suspects some sort of heist, but can't get it out of either of them.
You know, I went and saw Jake last night, and he turned me down cold! Said we weren't partners no more! Now I'm here.
Jake tells Kristen that he's playing Montana's group to get the money and escape with her. Kristen tells Jake that she needs to pretend to be with Montana, but she really loves Jake. Montana suspects that Kristen has feelings for Jake, but she tells him that she's just playing Jake like she was supposed to, and she's fine if they kill him after. Rosalita thinks Jake might be playing her in favor of Kristen, and Sykes has no idea what's going on. If this all sounds like Wild Things Border Edition, that's because it is. On the Border is a thriller that's fueled by sex, betrayal, and twists among beautiful people, and those strengths are also its downfall. A story that runs this hot can only sustain itself for so long before burning itself out, like an engine running in the red. The problem with a narrative driven by this many twists is that it conditions the audience to not be surprised by anything. That's not to say that I expected the last couple of reveals near the end of the story, only that my brain just sort of shrugged and said, yeah, that fits with the rest of it. Casper Van Dien isn't much of a protagonist. I mean, yes, I get that he's attractive if you're breeding a master race, but he doesn't have the charisma necessary to drive a film like this. He's just so generic. Where Jake Barnes is written to have a quiet cleverness to him, keeping him one step ahead of all the other characters, Van Dien just looks bored. Camilla Overbye Roos is only slightly better as the damaged femme fatale stuck in an abusive relationship. Her character, who typically appears in these films as someone for the hero to save, thus cathartically dispelling his trauma, would be a lot better served if Jake had any sense of trauma.
Know what he did to me, Jake? Nothing. But he found my little sister. He found her, and he got her.
Instead, we're not sure if her story is genuine or just another part of the con. I get that that may be the point, but it only works if we see it affecting Jake, which it doesn't. Bryan Brown seems to be having a lot of fun in this one, and it's nice to see him getting out of his discount Michael Caine phase. His relationship with Roos's Kristen is twisted, but not in the way that makes me want to see it end. More in the way that made me want to nuke it from space. Brown's biggest problem is not his own performance, which is appropriately over the top. It's that Bentley Mitchum decided he was going to go way, way, way over the top. Mitchum goes over the top, loops back under, runs around the tree, through the hole, and goes back over the top again.
That itty bitty titty bar. Huh? It's the one across the street from the hotel where you're banging your half-phased wife. All right then. 10 o'clock it is. You're looking good, Jake.
Having either of these characters in your trashy border sex movie is fine. Having both characters in your trashy border sex movie is redundant. And yet, I don't hate this movie in spite of how achingly obnoxious and dumb it is. It's like having a crush on a person who is objectively awful, but just so pretty. Longtime softcore actress Rochelle Swanson gets a chance to actually do some acting here. I mean, it's not much, but it's a step up from Secret Games 3 and Illicit Dreams. Her Mexican accent is something, though.
I said I need Jake Barnes at a little motel across the border. And fuck his brains out.
How do you say in English?
Helicopter.
I'll say this, though. For a film targeted at horny, disaffected men with trust issues, director Bob Mizurowski does shoot her body with maximal sexiness. Mizurowski doesn't go for the soft focus, Vaseline on the lens, dreamlike scenes that Gregory Dark does. The sex is loud, pulsating, sweaty, and sometimes destructive. Mizurowski doesn't have much in his repertoire that would indicate that he was capable of a really good film. The closest thing he had to On the Border was an equally sexed up Michael Pare filler, Point of Impact. He tends to rely too much on sizzle, and in this case that means sex. If Body Heat taught us anything, it's that the wild sex scenes go up front so that you hook the audience, and then you just imply sex later because the plot is underway. In this film, the narrative slams to a halt so that we can have a 2-minute grinding sex scene that has no reason to be so graphic. Christopher Harwood and Josh Olson's screenplay is winding. That's both a compliment and criticism. It does a fine job of setting up some threads where the audience says, I don't get why any of this is happening, and does tie them together just before you lose patience and turn the film off. But only just barely. Like many screenplays that rely on twists, though, it trips over its own internal logic in favor of misdirecting the audience. There's one scene where two characters who are in on a scam together have a conversation in which they maintain their con artist characters, even though they know who each other really is. It's the kind of thing that only makes sense because the audience needs to be fooled. Plus, many of the scams and twists that the movie relies on only make sense if the characters know things that they can't possibly know. And some of the twists are just there to set up set pieces. But again, everything in the film is nice looking, so I get why they want to lean into that. Most of the film's look, which is the real star of the film, is due to then unknown cinematographer Lawrence Sher. Sher was only 27 when the film was made, but he's since gone on to lens the Hangover films and was nominated for an Academy Award for cinematography and Joker. Sher's camera work is what lifts this above the usual made-for-cable dreck. For example, the shot where we first meet Kristen is genuinely creepy. And it's not just the showy story beats that get a lot of thought. There's a fantastic dialogue scene where Sher casts light around Roos's eyes, creating an ominous feel that makes the scene better than it has any right to be. Low expectations are this film's friend. If you can get past the lead character who looks like his lines are being read to him through an earpiece, and a director who seems more inclined to think about nipple placement than pacing, this might be a fun what-the-hell night in for you. The actors are gorgeous, the cinematography is striking, and the turns work until they don't. Next up, Casper Van Dien in a role that makes better use of his robotic Aryan charm.